Hello music people! This is a video tutorial providing an introduction to the Roland FA08 keyboard. This keyboard, I think, is a great keyboard for places like schools, churches, and other environments where there's going to be multiple users coming in and using it that don't necessarily have all kinds of time to tweak it and read a manual. This one is pretty easy to use and get started with. It also has some great sounds on it. And you can customize it and save some settings fairly easily if you think that's useful to you. And so I am going to start by explaining that there's basically three different panels here. The middle panel is sort of a navigation panel. You've got your LED screen here. You use these buttons to select different sounds, and you use the wheel to select different sounds within a category, and you can get into different menus using these buttons here. This panel here I'm not going to be talking about as much because it has some more advanced stuff. It's your sequencer, your sampler, there's pads here that you can use to control different stuff. There's an arpeggiator as well, so I won't be talking about that as much. And then this panel here I'll be talking a bit about. I call it the Sound Modify panel. You've got 6 different knobs that provide a variety of different kinds of real-time controls. And there's 4 different ways that you can set up these knobs, and so really you've got 24 different parameters available to you for real-time control with these 6 knobs. You've also got quick keys here that you can press to quickly split the keyboard or to layer the keyboard. You've got transpose, a transpose button, quick octave up-down button, your volume controls here. So that's basically it. So the first thing I want to talk about is finding some great sounds. These buttons along here will allow you to select different categories of sounds. So right now I'm in the A piano, acoustic piano category, and I've got a nice grand piano sound. Now, each of these buttons represents 2 different sound categories. So if I press this button again, I get to the E piano, electric piano category. So I've got some electric piano sounds like the Fender Rhodes or Wurlitzers or other kinds of sounds. I can press this button and I've got my organ sound. Press it again, I've got more keyboard type sounds. So this says super clav. By the way, I'm not sure how clearly this is showing up right now on the camera, but this is a, whenever the highlighted portion of the screen comes up, that is sort of the area of the screen where you're able to edit or modify or shift. And so I can, within this keyboards category, I can either turn this wheel and quickly scroll through all the different sounds within this category, or I can go one at a time by pressing the decrease or increase button to select all different sounds within the category. So you've got bass, synth bass, guitar, strings, orchestra, brass, winds, vocal. And I want to talk for a minute about this category here, button number 8. When you first press it, you get to the synth lead category. So whenever you see the word lead associated with synth, it's referring to a monophonic synth sound. That means that you can only press down one key at a time. Or more accurately, only one note will sound at a time. And that's useful in certain situations, and there's a lot of great vintage sounding synths that were monophonic synths, and this keyboard tries to emulate that, and I think generally it does a pretty good job. So almost all of the sounds in this category are going to be monophonic synths. If you really scroll through, and there's a lot of different sounds, if you spend a lot of time scrolling through and looking, you will actually find some decent sounds in this category that are not monophonic, but for the most part they're all monophonic. So let me just demonstrate what that is. So hopefully that was a little bit of an introduction about how you use the keyboard when you are playing monophonic synths. And then if you want polyphonic synths or just synthesizer type sounds where you can play more than one note at a time, you can press this button again and you get to the synth pad / string category, and here you can This is a good time for me to introduce the sound modify panel. Let's say that you've got this sound that you like, but you might want to modify it a little bit. Well, you've got this knob here for cut off. There's some great filters on this. This is resonance. So lots of things you can do there. You also have real-time control of the attack. Real-time control of release. So very quickly and easily, you can modify these sounds in a variety of different ways. If you want to press this select button, then you've got another 6 different parameters available to you. You've got some EQing, you've got some assignable parameters that you can do if you really want to get deeply into the editing, and I'm not going to get into that today, but that's just a quick introduction. Okay. Let me show you the octave up-down button. So you can very quickly press octave down and it'll shift an octave down, 2 octaves down, or octave up like that. There's a quick transpose button, and it's a little bit tricky to use. Basically what you have to do is if you hold it, press it, and then hold it down, then you can transpose up 1 semitone at a time. You can transpose up or down. All right. Let me introduce these split and dual buttons to you. I'm just going to go back to the acoustic piano sound. So let's say I wanted to do a piano string layer. What I would do is I would press the dual button, and right away the screen splits, and you've got upper and lower. That's how they've labeled it. And so basically this one's highlighted with full grand, and then this one also says full grand on it, but we wouldn't want to layer just 2 of the same sounds. So you would just use these cursors, up, down, left, right. This serves as a cursor to move to different parts of the screen and edit. So I want to select a different sound here. So I might select strings. And immediately I've got a nice layer here. Yeah, and I might decide, okay, I kind of like those strings. Now, you can also adjust the level of each layer. So let's say you want the piano to be a little bit louder than the strings, which is typical. So I'm going to move the cursor there, and I'm going to move the piano level all the way up to 127, typically the highest number that you can use in MIDI world. And then I might turn the strings down a bit. Okay, so now I've got a setting that I like. It's piano and strings. I like that mix. And let's say you decide, I love that setting. That's the perfect setting. I want to be able to save it and, recall it immediately. Well, all you have to do is press the right button. Then this screen comes up, and what you want to do is you want to save it as a studio set, which will be highlighted. You press select. And then what you need to do is you need to select a right destination. And I recommend that you keep user 001 as just, it's called init studio, and just keep that as just your basic piano sound. And you can set up the keyboard in a way so that when you turn it on, you just get a basic piano sound right away. So then what you can do is you can move to a different username and location. So here somebody has saved some settings here, so I know that I'm not going to write to that one because I don't want to overwrite somebody else's setting. But if it's called iNet Studio, chances are nobody has done anything with it yet. And what I suggest you do is you rename it to something so that if you've got, you know, multiple users, they know not to touch it because, oh, you know, that's Jesse's sound. So, you know, you incorporate your name into the name of it maybe. So I'm just gonna save this just as Jesse Studio and press OK. And then write, and it's going to ask you, are you sure? And you press OK. And it's as simple as that. And so now, user 003 is Jesse Studio, which is my grand piano and string layer. Alrighty, now to get to that, what you have to do is you move your cursor up so that this part of the screen is highlighted. And when you first turn the keyboard on, or how I've got it set up, when you first turn it on, you're at Studio Set 001 in the user bank, which is just a grand piano. And it'll look like this. So you'll go cursor up to the top, and you can scroll over, and here is your perfect piano and string setting. There's also a whole bunch of preset studio sets that you can explore by looking through here. There's some pretty good ones. You can check them out. I'll let you do that on your own time. I don't have time to do that right now. Okay, let me also show you how you can split the keyboard. So you've got a split button here, and as before, the default thing is to just put grand piano on both sides, but that's kind of pointless. So let's say I want to do a bass kind of a sound in my left hand. So I scroll over here and I select bass. Okay, so that sounds pretty good. And I can adjust the volume levels of the piano and the bass if I want to, the same way as I did before. Now, let's say you want to adjust the split point, because the default split point is at middle C. So right now, I've got piano, 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 and then as soon as I move past lower than middle C, then I've got a bass sound. But let's say I want to be able to play some lower notes than middle C on the piano. Well, you move the cursor up here, and it says C4, and I can shift it, and as I do so, you can actually see there's a diagram of the keyboard here, and you can see it moving down. So I might want to set the split point to G3. So now I've got piano until G3, lower than G3 is the bass, and so I can now do. Okay, so that's how you do a split. If you want to set up a more advanced and complex layer or split, like maybe where you layer 2 sounds down here and you layer 3 sounds up here, then you have to actually go into Studio Set mode, where you press both of these buttons at a time, and then you come up to a whole list of up to 16 different sounds that you can use. Now, you can use this in a couple different ways. You can use it to quickly access 16 separate sounds if you want. So right now, I've got piano, and then I just have to move my cursor down, and I've got bass all the way up. So you could select 16 different sounds and just have them, you know, right here, and you don't have to be switching to a different studio set. Now, I've got these pad set up in such a way so that you can select one of these 16 channels just with a single press of a button. So I can go press 1, it jumps right back up to 1. I press 2, it goes straight to the bass sound. So that's how I've got this set up, and it's a great way to do things, I think. So that's one way that you can use this. The other way that you can use this is to create some complex layers and splits. So to do that, you can go and make sure that this is highlighted and selected, which you can do. See, now there's this yellow dot there, so piano is on, and then if I do this, then now piano and bass are both on, and then I can select my split by doing this. So lots of different options there for you to create your custom sounds and save your custom sounds. All right? So I'm going to get out of that for now, and I'm just going to go back to my piano sound. Now, there's another thing that I want you to be aware of on this keyboard, and it's actually pretty cool. There's this D beam, and the D beam is really cool. There's actually a laser beam type of thing that shoots out of here, and you can use it to control various aspects of your sound. And right now it's off, but if I press one of these buttons, it turns it on. So if I turn the solo synth button on, this thing actually acts as kind of a crazy theremin. You know, the closer I get to this, the higher the sound goes. Now there's also a button called expression, and if you press that, that could be kind of cool. I'm going to show it to you on an organ sound. You can actually bring the volume up and down. The closer you get to the beam, the more that your volume goes down. And then there's also an assignable button, so if you really wanted to get into some heavy programming, you could make this control any parameter that you want. I want to point this out to you because if you don't want to use this, you have to make sure that none of these buttons are pressed in, right? I mean, can you imagine if you had like a bunch of music laid out, you've got solo synth button pressed, and you know, you put your arm out to turn your pages, and then that sound happens in the middle of your set. You wouldn't want that. So I just wanted to point that out to show you what the keyboard can do, but also to just advise you that if you're not using it, just make sure that none of those buttons are pressed. And so there's a lot more that can be said about this keyboard, but I hope that this gives you an introduction to using it, to finding some great sounds, to saving some of your settings. And so I hope that video is helpful, and I will see you next time.